welcome back. This is me from the future coming back to record an extra little intro to add onto this video, which I forgot to do at the beginning. I wanted to make a little request of all of you. I would really like to film a Q&A video. I did one of those way back when I first started my channel, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I'm, I don't know, less nervous and a little more confident in doing my videos now, so I think that it would be fun to do a Q&A again. So if you have any questions that you would like me to answer in a Q&A video, please just drop them down in the comments and let me know. And a few weeks from now, I will have a new Q&A video coming out that you can enjoy. So thank you for helping me with that. And then now we'll do a little more time travel and just go back to the regular beginning of the video. Thanks. Hey there. Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some ASMR with books. I love book-related ASMR, and I love books. I love reading. I love going to the library. I love anything to do with books. And so I thought it was high time I did a book-related video. So what I have done, because I have a lot of books, I love a lot of books, and I didn't want to overthink which books to include, I have a short stack of books beside me, and this is one of them. And these are books that I have read many times. They're kind of like my comfort food books that I go back to over and over again. And I have a lot of books like that, but this is a sampling. So this first book that I have, this bright yellow book, is called Stone Mattress, 9 Wicked Tales by Margaret Atwood. And I love this cover because you can see that the O is missing from Atwood, and the raven up here has the O in his mouth. And it says up here at the top, eclectic, funny, vibrant, terrifying, beautiful, and utterly delightful, the Boston Globe. And that's a pretty apt description of Margaret Atwood's writing. I love her. She is absolutely one of my favorites. Also down here at the bottom it says best-selling author of The Handmaid's Tale. And I read The Handmaid's Tale for the first time when I was a freshman in college. So that was 1997. So long before the television series version, long before it, kind of got popular again because of current events over the last few years. But I just loved it then, and it totally blew my mind and made me think about things in new ways. And she's been one of my favorite authors ever since. So let's do a little tracing on the front here. I really enjoy tracing in ASMR, and I sometimes do it sort of as part of a video that might have some other theme, and I don't usually focus totally on tracing. Take my time today with this tracing. Stone Mattress. Margaret And I like this, I'm actually not sure if he's a raven or a crow. He is a black bird. Perhaps he is a crow, since crows steal things, right? So maybe he has stolen this ring. Or is it ravens that steal things? If you have more knowledge than I do about crows and ravens, please fill me in. As you know, I really like birds, and I'm getting mixed up about these two right now. So I will read to you from the back of the book. First of all, here's Margaret Atwood. She's so adorable. Not only is she an amazing writer, she's just a really cool person. From everything I've ever read about her, interviews I've watched with her, she just seems like she's every bit as cool as the things that she writes. And I will read you the back cover. So again, this is a book of short stories. Of course, Margaret Atwood has many novels, books of short stories, poetry. She does it all. I really love her short stories. I think maybe they're my favorite. I have a couple of her poems that are very dear to me, but I think her short stories might actually be my favorite genre for her. And these are indeed 9 wicked tales. She does such a good job of, give you a little page turning here while I'm talking. She does such a good job of, I don't know, writing things that are interesting and funny and also kind of disturbing and thought-provoking at the same time, and then also just bitingly funny. And these stories are all of those things. They have all of those qualities. So it says on the back here, in this extraordinary collection, Margaret Atwood gives us 9 unforgettable tales that reveal the grotesque, delightfully wicked facets of humanity. Alphenland, the first of 3 loosely linked stories, introduces us to a fantasy writer who is guided through a stormy winter evening by the voice of her late husband. In the title story, a woman who has killed 4 husbands discovers an opportunity to exact revenge on the first man who ever wronged her. By turns thrilling, funny, and thought-provoking, Stone Mattress affirms Atwood as our greatest creator of worlds and as an incisive chronicler of our darkest impulses. And I think that's a very apt description. She is a wonderful creator of worlds. She really is. And so I think I will read you the table of contents of this one and tell you a little bit about the stories. Just for reference, you know, in the front of the book they have this also by Margaret Atwood, and there's like this 2-page spread of novels, shorter fiction, poetry, nonfiction for children. She's just done everything. And this book was published in 2014. And you can see, got here the contents. And as the back cover alluded to, the first 3 stories are related. They're told from the points of view of 3 different people who are sort of in the same universe of what is happening. And I love these 3 stories because they center around characters who are in their 80s, but it's all about how the love affairs that they had when they were in their 20s were still affecting their lives, and the ways they think about things, and those people were still important to them, and it's just, she's so brilliant. And it's also, she's wonderful at writing about writers, and these 3 stories are about writers. So the first is called Alphenland, and that is spelled Alphinland. Be too small for me to trace. And Alphenland is the name of the fictitious world created by one of the characters in the book that is the setting for her many fantasy novels that are very popular all throughout her life. And the second story is called Revenant, and the third story is called Dark Lady. So I really do like that series of stories. Other stories in this book include The Freeze-Dried Groom, which is a story about a guy who works for a pawn shop and goes and buys abandoned storage units to sell what's in them. And when he goes one week to pick up a storage unit, to open a storage unit, the one that he opens has a complete wedding inside it, everything for a wedding in the storage container, including a freeze-dried groom. So that's a great teaser for that story. There's also one called I Dream of Xenia with the Bright Red Teeth, and that is a cool story because it is based around the same characters from one of Margaret Atwood's novels that I love called The Robber Bride. And so it's those characters in a different short story that she wrote later on. There's also a story in here that I love called The Dead Hand Loves You. And that is a story, it's a wonderful story within a story. It's a story about a guy who wrote a horror story called The Dead Hand Loves You, which became very popular and was made into movies and all of this. And there are all of these complications about the rights to that story and who helped him write it and who really owns it, and how this horror story that he wrote and made him famous has also sort of haunted him his whole life. So, I could go on and on about this book. I shouldn't spend my entire video on one book, but this is truly a good one if you're looking for short stories that will entertain you and make you go and sort of thrill you and make you aghast at the same time, but in the best possible way. So, Stone Mattress by Margaret Atwood, one of my read again and again and again collections. Okay, next up we have a book that I have had for a very long time. This is a young adult novel that I first read when I was a young adult, when I was in high school. It is by Bruce Brooks, and the book is called Midnight Hour Encores. And you can see on the cover here, there's an image of a young woman with a cello. And this book centers around a 16-year-old girl named Sibilance, who is a cello prodigy. And it's the story of she and her father, who has raised her, and her meeting of her mother, who she has been estranged from for her whole life, and the story of her trying to understand what happened when she was born and why her mother didn't stay in her life. And it's very much a coming-of-age story, all of those things interwoven with her creativity and her music. So this book was published, I guess it was, I don't know, I read it in like 1993. It was published in 1986, and Bruce Brooks wrote a lot of young adult novels in the 80s, and this is the one that I've read again and again, that I still read as an adult, and I read it every couple of years because I love it. It's a story that has a lot of music interwoven into it, as you might imagine, classical music, because she is a classical performer, and also the music of the 60s, because a lot of the story is about her, like I said, her relationship with her father and her mother, and they had her in the 60s and, you know, were hippies and very much part of that scene. And so there's this juxtaposition of her learning about that culture and that music and that time against the backdrop of her classical training and the way she sees the world as a classical musician. So I'm going to read you the first chapter of this book because I think it is one of the most brilliant first chapters of a book ever. So this is chapter 1 from Midnight Hour Encores by Bruce Brooks. When I was 9, suddenly all the other girls in the 4th grade were horse freaks. They sat around in class with their hands curved over the tops of their desks so the teacher couldn't see that they were drawing deformed stallions on the backs of their spelling tests and lettering sweaty names like Stormy and Flicker on their notebooks. It would have been bad enough if they were writing boys' names. Boys I could have understood. I knew that someday we were all supposed to get into boys. But horses? Nobody I knew had grown up to marry a horse. I tried to consider liking horses. I even tried to draw a horse myself after reading about them in a couple of my encyclopedias. But I stopped after the first foot. Horses run on what is really one of their toes. It hurt just to think about it. I decided the reason I wasn't fascinated with horses might be that I had never seen one. I already knew the girls in my class didn't own horses, but at least a few of them had seen them somewhere. So I did what I sometimes do when one of my investigations hits a gap. I asked Taxi, "What would your father do if you asked him to show you some horses?" He'd say, "Sure, honey," and put down his newspaper or book or TV guide and get you into the car for a 20-minute drive into the nearby country for a peek at a few of the animals in a local stable. If you lived in Washington, D.C. like us, your dad wouldn't even have to drive 20 minutes because there are stables in Rock Creek Park right in the middle of town. "There, sweetie pie," your dad would say, waving his arm at a barn or a circled fence inside which a bunch of the things snorted and tiptoed and shivered. "There's some horses." But my father is a little different. Yes, he put down his book. Yes, he said, "Sure, honey," and got me into the car. Yes, he started driving toward the country. But he didn't stop for almost 6 hours, and when he did, it wasn't near a stable. It was in the middle of miles of sand dunes where we cooked dinner over a fire and spent the night in a tent. When he woke me up before dawn the next morning, he didn't mention horses. He handed me a cup of coffee in the dark and waited while I drank it and ate an apple. Then, in complete silence, he led me on a stumbly climb across 1,000 sand dunes as the sky got less black. We stopped suddenly, 10 feet from the top of one dune. The sky got lighter at the edges, turning as pink as somebody's gums. Taxi didn't say anything except to ask if I was cold and offer me his sweater, which I took, also without saying anything. Then all a sudden he cocked his head and beckoned me, and we climbed with him in the lead. He turned and pushed me up ahead for the last couple of steps. And then, zing! I was standing on the very top edge of a straight fall 60-foot sand dune, looking across half a mile of pale beach dotted with pools at the ocean, which somehow I didn't expect, even with all that sand. The sun was just untucking itself over the sea off in the distance, and the sky was turning pink and yellow. There was a breeze, thick and warm, and I have just completely forgotten about horses because it's pretty nice out here, and who cares about short-haired animals that run on single toes? Taxi cares. That's who. Taxi cares about anything you ask him about. Put him in motion, and you can't just turn him off. He sets things up so well, sometimes you'd think he controls everything, but he really doesn't. He set this one up perfectly, though, because just as I am doing my city girl marvels at nature routine, I suddenly notice that the pounding of the surf is getting louder from a specific direction, the way a secondary theme sneaks into the melody from the violas in an orchestra. And when I look in that direction, off to my left, instead of surf, I see a sudden wild spray of beautiful monsters from Mars swirl out from behind a dune, gracefully rolling toward me, not snorting or shivering, but just running on the flat beach beneath me, splashing in the edges of the tide, and emptying those little pools with a single stroke of a hoof. Taxi doesn't have to wave his hand and say, "There, sweetie pie, there's some horses." He stands behind me so quietly, I don't even know he's there, watching while the herd runs by and runs away down the empty beach without losing speed, until all I can see is an occasional sparkle in the growing sunlight when one of them smashes a pool. I stare for a few minutes. After a while, Taxi's hand lands on my forearm like a confident little bird, and I turn, and he leads me back to the car. We don't say anything, really. I sleep all the way home. The next day I went to school, and when I watched the Hillarys and Jennifers write "Stormy" so urgently, I felt even further away from them than ever. But it wasn't Taxi's fault. I asked him to show me something, and he did. And this whole story is just to demonstrate why I only ask him to show me things that seem important. He doesn't fool around, and he doesn't give up, and he doesn't let go even when you would just as soon skip the inquiry midway through. 3 days ago, I asked him to show me my mother. Is that not fantastic? That is such a good first chapter. And it just gets better and better. I probably should have said in the beginning that she calls her father Taxi because his first name is Cabot. And at some point when she was small, she made the joke between cab and taxi and started calling him Taxi. So anyway, Midnight Hour Encores by Bruce Brooks. Great young adult novel and great all ages novel if you're a lover of music and a lover of relationships. You'll like this book. Another one that I like to read again and again. Okay, next up we have a book of poetry, and this book is called Rapture by Carol Ann Duffy, who is British Poet Laureate. And this book was a winner of the T.S. Eliot Prize. And Ann Duffy is a poet who was introduced to me by a dear friend, and her poetry is so wonderful. And when I first read this book a few years ago, it inspired me to start writing poetry again, which I had done in the past and had not really done for a number of years. And I love her poetry because she does a wonderful job of combining sort of the lyrical and the technical with the visceral and the tangible of the real world. Maybe that would be my review of her if I were to describe her. But this is a wonderful collection of love poems, some of them joyous, some of them anguished, as love poems can be. And I will read you one poem from this book. I'm never sure, what's okay about reading things that are still in copyright, but I think it's okay to read a select poem. So I'll just tell you the names of some of these poems because I love, the simplicity, sometimes indirectness of poem names. You, text, name, forest, river, hour, swing, rain, absence, world, hand, rapture, elegy, row, tea. I think this is the one that I will read you. This poem is called Tea, T-E-A. I like pouring your tea, lifting the heavy pot and tipping it up so the fragrant liquid steams in your china cup. Or when you're away or at work, I like to think of your cupped hands as you sip, of the faint half smile of your lips. I like the questions, sugar, milk, and the answers I don't know by heart yet, for I see your soul in your eyes, and I forget. Jasmine, gunpowder, Assam, Earl Grey, Ceylon. I love tea's names. Which tea would you like? I say. But it's any tea for you, please, any time of day. As the women harvest the slopes for the sweetest leaves on Mount Wu Yi, and I am your lover, smitten, straining your tea. Thank you, Ann Duffy, for your beautiful words. So I would highly recommend any of her books of poetry. She has a wonderful book called The World's Wife, which are all these poems written from the point of view of characters, female characters, in stories that are traditionally told from the male point of view. For example, one of my favorite poems from that book is called Mrs. Midas, and it's about the wife of someone who receives the Midas touch. She's just brilliant. Again, it's like she's like Margaret Atwood, that she can just bring sort of the beauty and the pain of life into such clear relief and somehow make you appreciate it all and see the beauty in it. So, there's my poetry recommendation for you for the day. Ann Duffy. Rapture. Okay, the next book. This is truly my comfort food book. And if there are any other lovers of this book, please tell me, because sometimes I feel like I'm, this is truly, I am like a cult lover of, this is like my cult favorite, or however they would say that. But this is Watership Down by Richard Armitage. And you can see this lovely rabbit is on the front of this book because it is a novel about rabbits. And it's really funny because I have lent this book to at least 3 friends that I can think of, with the sort of disclaimer of, it's an adventure story about rabbits. Just read it. Just trust me. Read it and you will love it. And people are always like, rabbits? And then they love it. And I convert people to my obsession. So this book was published, I believe, in the late 70s. Early 70s, 1972. And it is sort of an epic adventure story. In the front here, we've got some maps that show the warren and the territory that the characters follow, because, as I said, basically this is a novel about a band of rabbits who set out on their own to establish a new warren. And as I said, I mean, it's an adventure story. There is romance, there is action, there is intrigue and mystery. And, you know, they're not rabbits like running around with little outfits on with swords swashbuckling or something like that. And I mean, and books like that can be fun. I love the Redwall books by Brian Jakes. Those are fun. And those are, you know, swashbuckling rodents, basically. But this book is, you know, it's based in naturalistic fact. It's about, you know, rabbits in their habitat, but you get to, you know, be a part of their conversation and their camaraderie. And again, just, you know, take my word for it. I feel like LeVar Burton, except I am saying, take my word for it. Ba-dum-bum. So I will read you. First of all, it says on the front of this, astonishing. Everyone who can read English should read it. St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And for some reason that little testimonial has always sort of cracked me up, because I do love this book, but that's a pretty, you know, strong recommendation. Everyone who could read English should read it. And I mean, I'm like, has it never been translated? Like, can people not read it in other languages? And it just cracked me up that it's the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Like, I don't know, like, okay, in St. Louis they found this astonishing. But anyway, I do love the book. I just find that to be a funny testimonial. It says on the back, one of the most beloved novels of our time, Richard Adams' Watership Down, takes us to a world we have never truly seen, to the remarkable life that teems in the fields, forests, and riverbanks far beyond our cities and towns. It is a powerful saga of courage, leadership, and survival, an epic tale of a hardy band of adventurers forced to flee the destruction of their fragile community and their trials and triumphs in the face of extraordinary adversity as they pursue a glorious dream called home. Welcome to the Warren. So if you want to learn about rabbits and read a good adventure story, you should go for it. And like I said, this is like, if I'm like sick or I don't feel good or like I'm stressed or my brain just doesn't want to like function, I pick this up and read a few chapters, and I really love it. And yeah, I didn't read it actually until I was an adult. I didn't read it as a young person. So no matter what age you are, I think it's very enjoyable. So, Watership down. Okay, I have one more book for you. And this one I just really love its tappability. I feel like some of the other ones maybe weren't the most tappy. But I love this book, and I actually used it in another one of my videos, a Friend Comforts You video, which I'll share a link to. But this book is the Poetry Pharmacy. And it has this fun little double P logo, this little goblet. And it says, tried and true prescriptions for the heart, mind, and soul. William Sieghart. Particular books. And I bought this book at the Gutter Bookshop in Dublin when I was on holiday there a few years ago. I had never seen this book before, and I love it because it's filled with a lot of classic poetry, and it's presented in the form of a prescription type list. So you can look through the table of contents and go through, there's all these different categories for mental and emotional well-being, motivation, self-image and self-acceptance, the world and other people, love and loss. And so you can go through, and choose and say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling glum, or I'm feeling hopeless, or I'm feeling joy, or I'm feeling excitement, and choose a poem for yourself. So there's a lot of really good ones in here. And it's neat because for each poem, he gives you, on the left side here, the condition and what it is, and then other things it's suitable for, and then he gives you a little kind of write-up of why he chose this poem for that condition, and then you get the poem itself. So I will read one from here. This is for the condition of self-recrimination, also suitable for alienation, loneliness, regret, and self-loathing. And this is the poem Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. This is a very popular poem. And the very first time I read this poem, and I read the very first line, I burst into tears. So it's very powerful. And if you happen to be feeling any feelings of self-recrimination, which is something that I struggle with a lot, I hope this might inspire you. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. So, to me, poetry is amazing medicine. And so I encourage you to go out and find some poetry wherever you can. Maybe write some poetry. And, let it nourish you. Let words and language nourish you. It can really be a comfort and a balm in a lot of situations, at least for me. So that's a gift that I like to give myself during stressful times, is taking time to read some beautiful words, some beautiful poetry. So I think that's the last book I'll share today. This video is already longer than I was thinking that it would be, but it's because I can't stop talking about books. I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you'd like to see more book-related ASMR, let me know. Take good care.